Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunwerks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
All right, guys, welcome back to a new episode of Long Range Pursuit Podcast. This is going to be another Instructor's Corner, and I've got with me Ben Titus and Pake Taylor here, and we're going to be talking about how to get your hunting rifle set up in 15 minutes. Pake, what's the argument there?
I think it's going to take longer than 15 minutes, but can it be done in 15 minutes for a rifle that you have confidence in already? Without question.
Okay, so the big thing here is we want to tell you how simple it is to get your rifle set up and take away some of the intimidation that you might get from, hey, hunting season's coming up and man, I got to go spend a whole day at the range. Okay, we want to show you that there are some simple steps and we'll go through all of them here. Get your rifle set up and you guys can follow along with this and you should be ready to rock. Let's introduce Pake and Ben a little bit here. Pake, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Pake Taylor. I'm a member of the sales team. I've been here for right over 2 years now. Help out with the LRU guys just like all the other sales guys. You know, we do a lot of traveling with them, a lot of shooting with them. A little bit about my own background. I grew up out west chasing critters, shooting long range. So, I've been doing it for a while. And it's one of those things that, you don't know stuff and you don't know what you don't know until you start doing a lot of the, long range shooting out there. So, I'm always learning and, trying to gather and glean information off anybody I can. And this is a really good spot to work for to do exactly that.
Yeah, for sure. Pake's taught me a lot of things. I'm an instructor, obviously, but Pake's got a ton of knowledge with reloading. He's a big caliber guy. He likes to launch and stuff really far. I like some more of the finesse stuff. So Pake's on the other end, and he's taught me a ton. So, and then we got Ben over here.
Yeah, Ben Titus, and I'm from Eastern Oregon originally and grew up hunting, shooting, and fishing, same as probably the rest of us. And we started getting into the long range thing probably when I was like 12, shooting rock chucks and varmints and stuff. So I kind of lean towards the smaller end of the spectrum on cartridges. That's my preference. Shot a lot of like 20 calibers, 22, 6 mils, stuff like that. So worked for the marketing side of Gunwerks, marketing and creative, and been here for like 2 years. And a lot of what I learned was self-taught, and since coming here, we get to film a lot of Long Range University and attend those classes. So learned a lot since then, and from Ian and Pake too. We've been on some hunts, and yeah,
thanks. I'll say Ben is a varmint killer. If you get in his truck, his dashboard is not like the old carpet or anything like that. It's a coyote laying across his dashboard. So he's a true varmint hunter. But here we go. We're going to go in. We've got 6 steps here, okay? Now, this is if you have a rifle that, again, you already know, okay? Like, you've shot it some. It's in the safe. Hunting season's coming up, and let's get this gun out because we have a hunt coming up this weekend, okay? That's what this is about. The 6 steps here, and we'll go through them here quick as an overview, and then we'll kind of come back and hit each one. But first, we're going to check our zero. I think that's the first thing you should do, right? Okay, then we should chronograph it, okay? And that can be done while you check your zero, or if you've got a magneto speed, then you're going to have to do it separately. Build a profile in a ballistic calculator, and obviously we're talking about the Revic Ops app. Super simple, and once you've used it, you can really see that it's got some options that can put it above some of the rest. So then we're going to true. Okay, we'll talk about what truing is and why we do it and when you don't need to do it. And then Bluetooth your profile from your Revic Ops app to a rangefinder, our range-finding device, whether it's, our binoculars or our handheld BR4. And then you're going to validate. Just start lasing some stuff and shooting it and make sure, it's hitting everything you're aiming at. So those are our 6 steps. Let's go back. Maybe before we get into these 6 steps, how about Gunwerks? If you get a Gunwerks rifle in the box, it gets sent to your door or to your FFL, you pick it up, you go to the range. What are the steps there?
Sure. Brand new rifle, right?
Yeah.
You just
this big sales pitch, right?
Yeah. Okay. Brand new rifle. And I tell anybody I talk to, we'll shoot, we'll break in a barrel. all that sort of good stuff here. We're getting that muzzle velocity, all that sort of good stuff, right, to get you that BDC turret that, Gunwerks is known for and we've been making our brand off of. Then, let's say, we do a lot of business, let's say in Florida, for example, that's a huge elevation temperature swing. We're, here in Wyoming, a mile right under a mile above sea level. You go down to Florida, I mean, there's some spots that are below sea level there, right? So one thing, like you said, check zero. Make any little adjustment you need to. So let's say, hey, where we have it zeroed here, everyone shoots a rifle a little bit differently. Let's say you're impacting, let's say, 2 inches low for some reason, right? And it's not as daunting of a process as what a lot of folks think it is. So take that 2 inches low, for example, let's say inch right at 100 yards. So you're looking at that turret, and this is going to be the MOA side of things because it's a little bit easier to think of when you're zeroing, I think. So 2 inches low at 100 yards. What's that mean in a MOA value, Ian? 2 MOA, exactly. So you're moving that elevation turret up 2 minutes or 8 clicks, right? Take those next couple shots. Hey, there you go. I'm centered up there now, but I'm still, whatever I said, that minute left or minute right, whatever it was. So you're pulling off your windage knob. If it's something like our RS25i, and you're exposing that, your windage, you're making that, minute adjustment to the right or to the left, whatever. You're off, shooting that group again. Hey, I'm set there. Perfect. I'm re-indexing those turrets back to zero by loosening up the set screws on them. So this is the same process with a Leopold, with a Collis, with just about every scope out there. Yeah, there's little nuances for different optics, obviously, but in the meat and potatoes of it's going to be the same thing.
So real quick, you're just talking, you get your gun, and, guys are like, hey, 1,000 yards out of the box. But one thing they might not be thinking about is what you're talking about is the atmospheric change, the temperature change, the different way that the professional shooter at Gunwerks shoots it versus Joe Schmo at home. And their zero might just be a little bit different.
Exactly.
That's what he's talking about.
Yep. And it's not to say that, that people are shooting guns wrong by any means, but man, I could grab a gun that's perfectly zeroed for me, and, Ian and I shoot a lot together, and he may just not, his zero, the way that that rifle recoils into his shoulder, he's a little bit smaller frame than me. It's just going to be different, right? And there's nothing that we could do to prevent that, right? So, yeah, there's always going to be just a little bit of difference. Are there guys out there that will pull out one of our guns and not touch a zero for 5-6 years? Without a doubt. I know guys that are like that, and hey, it's just, not going to say luck of the draw, but it's just one of those things that it just works for them, and those zeros are right there, right? So, but going back to doing the actual zero. So
your zero set up,
yep,
you're good,
zero
you're
set,
shooting perfect at 100.
Yep, exactly. So once I re-loosen those set screws, index and everything back to zero, get everything back on zero on both your windage and elevation turret, I'm shooting another group or two just to make sure. I think ammo. I think that most folks don't shoot enough, for, what we like to do. We're always erring on the longer range side of things, but even, let's say a 500-yard shot. It's a shot that a lot of people will call a chip shot and things like that. I've seen a lot of people miss it 400 and 500 yards, right? Anything past 400 yards, I tell everybody, hey, that's a shot you got to pay attention to. So I think that guys just aren't shooting enough in general. And I get it. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got a busy schedule in front of them, right? And it really comes down to priorities and what you want to prioritize. There's some folks out there that will get one of our guns and they hunt back east, and hey man, 200 yards is a long shot. Ian and I were just out in Pennsylvania. We did one of our, I'm gonna call it a mini wind course. And we had a lot of blank stares because it's just
no one holds for wind.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's not needed, right? 200 yards, who cares, right? A lot of guys are still running lever actions and things like that, which I'm not saying is wrong. I got a couple lever actions in the safe. I hope to do some shooting with this year. It's just it's, I won't say a pet peeve of mine, and it's one of those things I chat with a lot of folks. We all chat with a lot of folks every day. We hear some of the horror stories and things like that, and a lot of it will real simply can just come down to, man, just getting out at the range more and getting more familiar with your rifle and with your setup. And then a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk through today, of getting your rifle hunt ready, it takes it to Ian's 15 minutes, if not even quicker than that. The gun that I pull out, like my 20 Nosler that I hunt with, man, I take a couple shots at, 1,200 yards. We're good to go. Sort of thing,
Yeah.
If there's any time you're going to spend time at the range and time shooting and putting more shots down range, it should be when you're getting your rifle set up. Confirming your zero, confirming your drops, building confidence with the gun. And so I think people don't shoot enough too. And I think a lot of that, you could even dial it right down to shooting enough at your zero range. I mean, I kind of buy into the sample size argument and getting, 5+ shots on target, because you're not getting a true sample size. And in this instance, you're looking for a true center of your group, because we know you're going to zero off of the center of your group, whether that's a 2-minute group or a half-minute group. So shooting enough to be absolutely confident in your zero. And once you're confident in your zero, you don't have to, let's say you're quarter minute off at 100, but you shot 3 shots and they were pretty much zeroed, and you didn't like try to adjust that quarter minute out. So now you're out to 800 and you're shooting 3/4 of a minute low. Well, you don't know that quarter minute that you started with being low at 100, you don't know that that's in there. So you're going to adjust your velocity or your BC to account for that 3/4 minute low. Now when you step it out to 1,000, now you're shooting high because you over adjusted off your zero. So being able to shoot, 5 to 10 shots, yes, ammo is expensive, but it's less expensive than your hunt, and it's less expensive than the heartbreak of missing. For me, missing a coyote's about the worst thing I can possibly do, but missing a doll sheep or anything else. So, spend the time to really dial in your zero and be confident in that. And use like the Revit Ops app, like use those zero offset values, because you can be at 1/10 of an inch off, and there's apps that can actually measure those distances, measure the center of your group, and calculate exactly how far off you are, and then you can put that offset in your Revit Ops app. So
Sure. So he's saying like maybe you're a quarter minute high or a half minute high, let's say half minute high, and you can put in the offset in the app. Yeah. And then from there on, your dopes or the ballistic solutions that the calculator is going to give you are going to account for that half minute, and they're going to, take a half minute off of your ballistic solutions as you go out. So we're diving real deep into the checking your zero, which is good. Okay, but let's jump back real quick to, you got your Gunwerks rifle, right? So we'll come right back to this list, but you got your Gunwerks rifle and you checked that zero, okay? And your zero's good now. Okay, if it wasn't perfect right when you got it, right? So you got it, maybe you did some finesse into it, and now what can you do? What's the next steps with your Gunwerks package?
For Gunwerks rifle, so yeah, after you know that zero's good, you got everything, zeroed back out on your turrets, and you'd have to kind of take a deep breath and really ask yourself, hey, what is the realistic distance I'm going to be shooting at? If it's somebody, let's say, from back east again, 500 yards, there's a lot of ranges out there that don't even remotely go close to that. So let's say, you drew a tag for Montana, we're chasing elk this year. Let's say, 500-600 yards, that's going to be it. I got to drive 2-3 hours away to go to a range that I could even shoot that far, which I'm going to caveat this already. But so say, let's take that 500 yards, you drive up to the range, you get to shooting, and, you're dialing, to that big 5 for your turret for 500 yards, and you're seeing how you're impacting. With that BDC turret, it makes it real nice and easy for just about anybody could shoot long range, right?
Mm-hmm. So we're getting pretty deep into the checking your zero, and that's a good thing. We want to be good on our zero, but let's jump back to the Gunwerks system. If you get the Gunwerks, box in the mail, and you open that sucker up, you're at the range, what do you do from there?
Sure. So, our new rifle's going out the door now. You're getting a QR code that's going to have that rifle-specific ballistics. So let's take a 28 nozzler with a 22-inch barrel doing 2950, for example. So you pull out that QR code, you take your Revit Ops app on your phone, take a picture of that QR code, that's going to populate that ballistics onto your phone. Then you take your new BR4 or your Revit binos, you download that app over to, download that ballistic profile over to one of those units, and then we sit down at our range. Let's say we're shooting 500 yards. You take that into account. Let's say, somebody, say your turret's set up for 4,000 feet and 60 degrees. Let's use that Florida example again. Let's say somebody's, 100 feet and it's 100 feet above sea level, say it's 70, 80 degrees out. So right off the bat, we already know there's going to be a little bit of environmental difference in there. But no need to worry about that because, either one of those units, either the BR4 or those binos are going to take that difference into account. So lower elevation, be a little bit thicker. Your air density is going to be a little bit thicker. You get a little bit warmer out there, it's going to thin out just a little bit. So, it'll kind of counteract themselves just a little bit. But let's take that 500-yard shot. And really, if I was outside of 600 yards, that's when you're going to see a big difference. You'll probably see a little bit at 500 yards, though, without question. So let's say you take that 500-yard shot, you snap your range with your BR4 to get it. It gives you your LOS, your line of sight of 500 yards, but it tells you your dial to your range is, this is going to be an exaggerated value, but let's say 475, just because it knows, that air temperature and your air density is just not as thick. So you dial to your 475 or, dial to your big 4 on that elevation turret for 400 yards. Your third hash over from that value is going to be your 475 mark. Hold it down, pull the trigger. You're going to be impacting perfectly at that distance.
Sure. Okay. So you've got your gun. It's zeroed. You Bluetoothed it over to a rangefinder, and it's doing all the changes for you automatically. It knows the differences, so you're set up to go. Okay. And like you said, more than likely, out to 500 yards, 600 yards, you're not even going to hardly notice. It might be this little tiny bit, right? But, then you get really deep into it, and that's when we kind of get into some of the stuff that we're doing here, okay? The checking the zero and the chronographing is step number 2, okay? So can you do those at the same time?
You can, if you have the right gear.
Right, okay, so you just said you have
I have a magnetospeed, yeah.
Okay, so can you do it with a magnetospeed?
I don't, no.
But yeah, you probably shouldn't, right?
Probably shouldn't.
You got something hanging on the end of your barrel, changes the harmonics, could change your zero.
Yeah.
What device can we do it? Lab radar, and we just did a video yesterday.
Yeah, the Garmin Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't checked that out, that Garmin Zero is pretty sweet.
It's real sweet.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
Yeah. So, okay, so we zero and we chrono at the same time. So that could be step 1 and step 2. We could combine them. So now it's down to 5 steps, okay? You get that muzzle velocity. And then you're going to build a profile in the Revic Ops app, okay? So for the Revic Ops app, you just need a couple pieces of information and you're ready to shoot, okay? The old school way is, and I did this in the Marine Corps where you zeroed and then you just had some basic dopes from the last 50 dudes who used that rifle before you, and you dialed them on and you shot, and if it wasn't perfect, what'd you do? You wrote them down, and so you had a dope card, right? So data on previous engagements. Now we've got ballistic calculators that give you a ballistic solution, so you don't have to do this, shoot at 200, shoot at 300, shoot at 400, all the way out and write down these dopes, and then have to do all this kind of crazy math, right? So when you build your profile, it's going to give you these ballistic solutions based off of the range that you zeroed off of, okay? Did you zero at 100 or 200? The caliber, obviously. Your scope height, your twist rate, that's the rifle right there. That's it, okay? So zero range, caliber, scope height, twist rate. And then what else do you need? Ammo. That's it, right? They're going to ask you, what ammo are you shooting? And what's your muzzle velocity? And you got your muzzle velocity from your chrono, right? Okay. How about zero range, 100 versus 200? What do you think, Ben?
I'm a fan of 100.
By far, yards.
You're going to be able to get a more accurate zero, a more precise zero.
Very much so.
Okay, why?
Well, you're getting some you're getting some environmentals playing into effect at your 200. You get it's
Even
not
at
going to be
100, right?
At 100, yeah, but it's just exaggerated, slightly more exaggerated at 200 yards. You're going to get a little bit of wind in there, and you're going to shoot better at a closer range. So that zero is going to be more of a perfect zero than an imperfect zero at 200 yards. So when you start shooting that rifle out at distance, you have a greater likelihood of having a truing and profile issue with that 200-yard zero than you do 100-yard zero. Like I said, it's just because you're shooting at a little bit farther range. There's a little bit more stuff that goes into it.
If you want a 200-yard zero, just zero at 100, run your ballistics in the Revic Ops, and then dial to your 200-yard zero and re-zero your turret. Like, if that's what you want to do, you can do that.
Sure.
And I'll just dial, I'll just dial to the 2 on a BDC turret, or I'll dial a minute up and just run my scope like that if I feel like I want that for some reason. So
sure.
There's other ways to do it.
And we used to zero our rifles at 200 yards for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the old argument of zeroing at 200 is just
hold on here,
right? Yeah. So So velocity is king kind of thing. They just want something shooting super flat, and I don't want to have to worry about any holding or dialing or anything. I just want to hold on here. But at this point, it's, you're going to get a better 0 at 100, and who cares about velocity anymore? You do.
A little bit, right?
Right? So, but what's the difference? If I'm shooting a 300 PRC that's flying versus, and I got to dial 20 minutes to 1,000, or I'm shooting a 308 and I got to dial whatever it is, 32 minutes at 1,000. I don't know that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You just dial up more, okay? Because we have rangefinders that are super sophisticated and ballistic calculators that can adjust for that as well. So.
Yeah, shooting steel, it doesn't matter one bit.
Yep. Okay, so we built our profile. That was real quick. And now we're going to true. What is truing? How about let's talk about the distance that you should true at. And now this is subjective, but truing is you're basically trying to find the curve or the trajectory of your bullet's path, right? So where should we start doing this at? 500 yards, 600 yards, 700 yards, where? It all depends on caliber, depends on where you're hunting, depends on your range accessibility, etc. Okay, so let's just say you're going to go on a western style hunt. You don't know, let's say you got a 7 PRC and you don't know how far you're going to shoot. You're pretty comfortable out to 800 yards, let's say. Okay, so I'm going to want to true at least 800 yards, probably 800 yards, right? I'm going to true at 800. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero my rifle, and then I'm going to build a ballistic calculator, and I'm going to see what it says to dial to 800 yards, and I'm going to shoot 800 yards. Okay, and I'm going to shoot a group, not just one, right? So I shoot a group on there, and let's say I'm perfect. Okay, sweet. Then I know that the rest of my stuff is backfilled, and the data's good, and I don't even need to true. Okay, but if you're low, let's say, then something in the calculator that you inputted is not correct. That's what truing it is. It's not that the calculator's wrong because it's math. It's that we put something incorrect into the profile, right? So those two things could be what?
Muzzle velocity or BC?
Muzzle velocity BC. Which one should we mess with?
I prefer adjusting your BC, taking that 7 PRC, for example. Again, Hornady does something that's really cool that sometimes won't allow you to change is they run a Doppler profile on one of their bullets. And not on all of them, but on a decent amount, they have a Doppler profile like that. 180 grain ELDM, they have a Doppler profile for it. And you could still true it sometimes. I would love to chat with Levi a little bit on why it only allows you to change that Doppler profile sometimes and sometimes not. But let's say it's not a Doppler, because that's a little bit different. And not, like I said, not every bullet's going to have that. So let's just say a normal G7. Let's say that 7 PRC, so 180 grain hybrid from Berger.
Sure.
So that's a 349 G7 BC. And you're impacting low, Ian said, right? So let's say, a 20-inch 7 PRC with that 180 grain hybrid, you're going to be doing about 2730, 2740. So let's say you're supposed to be dialed to 23 minutes is what it had you shooting. But you notice I'm a half a minute low. So you dial up to that 23 and a half. So you haven't changed anything in that profile yet, but you physically did on that scope because you're saying that, hey, I actually need a half, at 1,000 yards, you're looking at 5 inches, the difference there. So you go into your truing profile, your close range is going to be 100 yards.
Oh, we were saying it was at 800.
Oh, 800.
Half minute, we're 4 inches low.
Sure. Yeah, 4 inches low. So then you go into your Revic Ops app. You go to your truing function. Make sure you're on the correct profile. That can trick guys up at times. So your close range is going to be 100 yards, and you're going to have 0 MOA adjustment because that's what you're zeroed at. Then you go to your far range of that 800 yards, and then you're going to input that that adjusted range that it actually took you to impact correctly.
So you're manually typing in what your scope is set to.
Yep, exactly. So let's say that 23 minutes. So that's what it originally called for, but it actually took you 23 and a half minutes. You're not just, and this is a point where a lot of guys get tripped up. Sometimes they think, hey, I just need to input that half MOA difference. No, you got to input that whole, what it actually took you to impact.
The entire dope.
At 800 yards. Yep, so that 23 and a half minutes. So we know that having to dial up that scope more is going to either want you to decrease that muzzle velocity or decrease that BC value. With Bergers and probably some other bullet companies out there, but I know for certain Berger, they run a BC just on a it's on a scale basically. It's that bullet doing, I think it's like 2,700 to 2,950. So you already know that, hey, if you're above or below that, you're going to have to make an adjustment at some point in time. So let's say we like we mentioned, we know that muzzle velocity is good. You know, you got some good reloads, or you got, you know, some really good high quality factory ammo like that Harmony match stuff. I guess for a burger bullet it wouldn't be that, but you know, for whatever you're shooting. So I prefer to adjust the BC, and not everybody, a lot of folks are scared to do that, but it's not something that we're doing, you know, haphazardly where we're taking guess, you know, hey, you know, let's adjust it to 340 just to see what happens. No, man, we got 20 plus years of that ballistic, or I guess not 20 plus years, 15 plus years of that ballistic, of our ballistic calculator, data to draw from, and just time built into it to where it knows for these, you know, for X and Y to be true, you know, that BC has to be doing that value. So once I make that adjustment and retrue your profile to that. So let's say it just brought that BC value down some to 346, let's say, for example. Once I know that's true, yeah, I'm going to shoot something a little bit closer. I'm going to shoot something at, you know, 400 or 500 yards, something closer, just to make sure that there's no difference showing up there.
Sure. Okay. So let's say, how about further?
Sure.
Okay. Just trying it out, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you shot something that now you're sitting at the range and there's a 1,200 yard target, and let's say you're low again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With a 7PRC, probably not, but you know, say you're running something else, you're shooting your 308 again, right? And you shoot that 1,200 yards, you can't trust the data, so we can't use a 308. But 6.5 Creedmoor, okay? And now you shoot 1,200 yards, and you're low again. What can you do? You can just retrue, right? Just do it again. Okay, and that's the question guys will ask, well, where do I true my rifle? Okay, why, you know, at class we do it at 840 yards, and that's just, you know, makes it simple for us, and that's our second furthest target, so it allows us to, you know, shoot the further one after and kind of make some points there. But they ask in class, like, why are we truing at 840 yards? Like, why not that closer? Why not further? So kind of the old school way of doing it is, let's use a 308 for easy math. You want to true at 80% up to 100% of that rifle's max effective range. So what's max effective range? Where the bullet goes subsonic, or, you know, the last place it does before it goes subsonic, I say. So let's call a 308, let's say it goes subsonic at about 1,000 yards. So to make the math easy.
Sure.
What, you don't believe that? Okay. So
308.
Yeah. So we'll say it's 1,000 yards and max effective range. So it's going below 1,100 feet per second at 1,000 yards. So we want to true that rifle at 800 to 1,000. Okay. Now, if I true it anywhere closer, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. That just means you're not getting the max capability out of that rifle, right? So if you want the max capability, then you go to 80% to 100%. You get as close to 100% as you can, because you are getting hard data right there, and then it backfills that data. But a lot of guys are like, hey, my range only goes to 600 yards. Okay, well, true at 600 yards, and you're good to go. But I wouldn't take a shot at a sheep at 800 yards with a 600 yard true. You know, like, you better get out and actually get some data on that. But that's the beauty, is once you have trued, then you can trust the rest of your data back in. So like Pake said, you always want to check it and validate. But the ballistic calculator does that math, okay? Takes the guesswork out. So we'll kind of go back through these over, and show how it can actually be 15 minutes here. But let's jump to the next one, okay? So after you've trued, now we're getting into the rangefinder, okay? How do you get the rangefinder to spit out your data? And that's by Bluetoothing from the Revic over to one of those rangefinding devices, right? Okay, so we've Bluetoothed. Now that the rangefinder's getting our data, I should probably laze that target again and make sure where I trued, and make sure it's giving me the dope or the ballistic solution that I was hitting with earlier. If it's not, then something didn't jive over. So you got to re-Bluetooth or make sure you recheck your true, okay? And then validate, okay? So again, let's just make this, I'm going to say it quick so it sounds like it's a quick process, but it actually is if you kind of know what you're doing, okay? Check your zero. Your zero's good. You chronographed at the same time. Boom. That took 5 minutes maybe, okay? Probably less. Then you build a profile in your app. If you know your way around the app, you've done it once or twice, it takes 30 seconds maybe.
Yeah,
30 seconds to build a profile. Okay, then we're gonna type in the profile. We're gonna type in the range, 800, 600, whatever it is. Okay, and we're gonna shoot it. And if it's not correct, then we dial up until we're hitting perfect, and we go back into the ballistic calculator and we use the truing function. If you don't, know how to use it through us talking like this, this is real fast and sped up. But there's some YouTube videos, and we teach it at LRU like crazy. Okay, because we want you guys to leave LRU knowing how to get your stuff set up. All right, so you true in your app, and then you Bluetooth to a rangefinder, and then you start shooting to make sure everything's good. It takes 15 minutes, if that, if you have a rifle that's already zeroed. If you're jacking with your zero and trying to figure out what's wrong, then it can take a little bit longer. But those are the main things, guys. How about if you're just getting some weird data out there? One of the things that I see a lot, now we're just talking about troubleshooting, okay? What are some of the things that we can do to troubleshoot?
Basically, if I miss, I'm checking my zero.
Okay.
Like that's it. This isn't at the range. Like if I miss on a hunt and I don't think I should have, I check my zero.
Okay.
So that's
sure.
That's I will hammer on checking my zero to the day I die.
Because Ben, it's none of Ben's fault.
None of guns, rifles are zero.
I've never had a rifle that's actually been zero.
Okay, let's talk. I even wrote that down because the first time I went out hunting with Ben, the first thing he said is, I don't think my zero's quite on. It's probably 0.1, 0.2 off to the left, but we should be good.
And if I was shooting antelope, I probably wouldn't notice. But
yeah,
prairie dogs are a different game.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that was a prairie dog hunt there. Okay, yeah. So anyway,
so I'll check my zero, and then my truing process is probably a little different than what you guys said, but I will shoot at a distance that's reasonably far, but not far enough that I'm going to have a lot of environmental factors usually, which is pretty much 400 yards. I'll check at 400 and make sure stuff's lining up there. And if it is, that's great. We'll step out to that 800 yard and I'll start looking at BC again. If it's not, I'm probably going to start adjusting my muzzle velocity and try to get my muzzle velocity to line up at 400. And then I will again check and not jump out too far to where like group size and environmentals and stuff can really wreak havoc with you. I'll check it at 600. And if I'm good at 600, I start getting confidence. And then if I go to 800 and 1,000, it's like, all right, well, if I'm seeing a little bit of variance out here, if I know that I may be shooting like one of my not Gunwerks rifles that's more of a 3/4 to a minute gun, it's like, all right, I'm going to keep putting rounds downrange and make sure that what I'm seeing is actually true. Like if I'm shooting a gun that isn't shooting that well, I will shoot more if I have a lot of confidence in the gun, and then I start getting more issues at 800 and 1,000. If I have a lot of environmentals that day, I might just come back and try again. If I don't, then again start adjusting your BC like Pake was saying.
So when you're talking about changing your velocity, are you changing your velocity even though you chronographed it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I will, because I've had my magneto speed just due to the way it's set up, whether it's a little bit off at an angle or something. I've actually shot rounds at, I had this issue with my 22 Creed. I shot rounds at like 550, shot a group while I was shooting over the magneto speed, using a mount actually, so it wasn't attached to the barrel. And my magneto speed said I had like a 75 foot per second extreme spread, but I shot a 2.5 inch group. It's like, I would not have shot that good of a group if you ran the numbers, if that was actually true. So then I went back to the chronograph and I did some troubleshooting with it and got that back to line up all right. But I guess what I'm saying is that it's still technology and it's still something that's man-made, and like you got to trust your bullet, and your bullet's not going to lie to you. So yeah, I'm gonna adjust that velocity, and then start troubleshooting further.
Sure. Okay. I mean, that's a good take for sure. Gosh, I want to trust my dang chronograph. Like it's,
and like we said, like this new Garmin and stuff, it's super easy to set up, and it's, we're able to trust a little bit more than older technology, especially if you're shooting sky screens or something. Yeah. Like you can't trust those. So.
Well, and one of the great things that we harp on for a whole day at LRU is, hey, If you don't have a chronograph, that's fine. You could true your muzzle velocity just off of a generic box posted, velocity from XYZ manufacturer and be just as good as, if it was something that we were doing, from what any imaginable custom rifle out there,
Sure.
whether it's a Gunwerks or an a la carte or whatever it may be, right? So that's where that our Revic app really appeals to just anybody. I tell everyone a good rangefinder is going to be the biggest thing that's going to make or break you on a hunt, because outside of your bullet, it's the only thing that's going to directly affect your success or failure.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
There's something I was thinking with that, with the TrueNet 4, or okay, you're doing the velocity. Like you said, with the app that you can do both, I think that's huge too. Is that
Definitely.
That's so true that and we didn't really state that if you don't have a chronograph.
If you don't have a chronograph.
Then you type in a guess, which is what the box says,
it is.
right?
Yep.
And you may have a totally different barrel length and totally different muzzle velocity, but that's okay. You shoot, you miss, you dial till you hit. You should be within a minute probably.
Yeah.
And then
definitely start closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go straight out to 800.
And that's a problem I've seen too. I taught at a range in Nebraska for a while, and I remember basically giving the same spiel.
Sure.
And it was a bad instructing moment on mine. I didn't look at this bench, this team down there in the end for a while, right? Like I'm kind of jumping and helping this guy. Pretty soon, his partner comes down and he's like, "You shot 2 boxes and we haven't hit at 800." It was 6.5 Creedmoor, and I'm like, "Okay, hold on. Like let's back it up then. Let's shoot at 400 and make sure we're good there. Let's shoot at 600, make sure we're good." And you can do it that old school way, right? If we had another guy, he had a semi-auto, like 18-inch 308, and he had to true it like 400 yards, right? Like he just didn't have that accurate a rifle to get that good data out there. So you got to know your system and your limitations there too. But yeah, anyway, let's move on. So some things you can do to troubleshoot. So checking your zero right off the bat, okay? That brings me to another point I got to say real quick. Something that I see a lot when guys, they're on at 400 and then they're off at 700, but then they hit the 1,000 and they're like, "My bullet's doing this," and it can't do that. It's not a roller coaster. It's probably their zeros off. That's the biggest thing that I see is, let's come back. And I say, "Well, where did you zero at?" "Oh, I zeroed at 200. "Okay, let's zero at 100. "Well, I did do a 200-yard zero at 100, and I was about 1 inch and 3/4 high,
Yeah.
maybe 2 inches high." It's like, dude, then that's not good enough, right? That's like saying, let's zero at 100, but it's okay if you're a half minute high or a half minute low. Like it's crazy. People say that. So anyway, let's bring it back to 100. We'll zero at 100. So thanks, Ben. Right back to your point. Okay. How about torque specs? One of the first things I check when I see goofy stuff, like you zeroed good, and I'm watching the guy zero, he shoots great, and then we go out and stuff's just not adding up. Then I'll come back and be like, "Oh, dude, let's check." One of the first things I do is I grab the scope and I wiggle it back and forth and see if the base screws are loose. I've done that. Guy shot 3 boxes of ammo and it was good. And the last, box of ammo, it was just like crap and we didn't know what was going on. And we had to take everything apart and start brand new because it was his dang torque wasn't right on his base and it came loose.
Sure.
So, okay, so your base, your rings, your scope rings,
Yep.
and your action
screws. Yep. Wet, for our Gunwerks system, a wedge.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So, those are some quick, easy things to do that you can, again, now you got to have a torque wrench though, fat wrench or the fix it sticks. If you're a long range shooter, you should have you should have a chronograph. And
if you're a hunter, I don't pack, and I, probably should, like you mentioned, fix it sticks is a great tool for, keeping something small and in your pack. But, I keep a little tool shop or a toolbox in my truck for, if for some reason something happens, and I don't want to go all the way home, I got to come out anyway. Yeah. Do you like, hey, quick torque something together, things like that. Shoot out a rock across the canyon and be back out. Yeah.
Yeah. And the big thing with that, guys, is just knowledge. And it's like knowledge is power, or it's not maybe your fault. You just haven't been taught. To me, it was until I got into the Marines, I didn't know my way around a gun. It was just like, oh, I'll scrub this thing a little bit. Oh, it's off. I'm going to aim high. What the heck's going on? Now you come to a class like LRU or whatever shooting school you go to, and pretty soon you actually know why and how. a torque wrench and messing with action screws was scary as crap for me. Okay, but now it's simple. Okay, I can unscrew those 2 screws, then screw them back on, make sure they were tight, we're ready to rock. Then we know that ain't it. Let's move to the next problem. Okay. So anyway, that's basically it, guys. Is these 5? I'm going to call it 5 steps in 15 minutes. When I take that gun out of the safe, I zero it and chrono it at the same time. Okay. Then I build a profile. I true it at 800 yards, whatever it is. And then I Bluetooth it to a rangefinder, and then I lays targets at multiple distances, 400, 300, 700, 900. And if I'm hitting all those, then heck, I'm ready to rock. Okay, then it's throw it back in the gun case and go. What should you not do if you have a suppressor?
If you have a suppressor?
And you're about to go on this big hunt, and you just checked all your data. What should you not do?
Don't take your suppressor off.
Don't take your suppressor off. We have so many guys that come in, they're about to go on this hunt, and they shoot this data, and they're going to reach for that suppressor. We're like, whoa, wait. Right? I mean, the stars have to align for everything to be absolutely perfect. Like, it will happen sometimes, but you can't trust it, right? You can't trust that you're going to be able to take it off, put it back on, and everything be the exact same. You should have the same velocity and all that jazz that you had previously, but I've seen 1.5 inches change on zeros by taking the suppressor off.
Yeah, and there's other suppressors that'll be 5 inches.
Yeah.
It just really depends on the suppressor.
You just gotta test it.
And I know our suppressors have a cutout in them that are supposed to minimize any kind of zero shift. Now that's talking a little something different. That's talking about if you shoot your zero with like a muzzle brake, and then you take it off and you put a suppressor on, you should have a very similar zero. But okay, so back to what I was talking about is I shoot all my data, I take suppressor off, I put it back on. My zero may have shifted that quarter minute, half minute somewhere. So keep that suppressor on. Heck, my suppressor stays on my gun through the whole season. Last thing I want to talk about is cleaning.
I was going to bring it up too if you were about to.
Cleaning your rifle. Ben, when do you clean your rifle during the hunting season?
During the hunting season, I pretty much don't touch it. It pretty much gets cleaned, and then I shoot my zero, validate, and I don't touch it. If I know that rifle holds its accuracy, most guys, they're not going to shoot, a half dozen animals or a dozen animals in a season. It's not getting shot that much, so you shouldn't have an issue.
We're supposed to clean our guns?
Yeah. I would say you clean it at the end of the year or right at the beginning of the year, and then you go to the range and you season that thing
Start this process.
To be fair, we want guys shooting more. So if you're shooting more, when are you going to clean your rifle?
Every rifle's going to be a little bit different. You look at something going like if you're running a suppressor or running a muzzle brake or running, a 6.5 PRC or running a 300 drum. Everything's going to be a little bit different. What I found with, my go-to rifle, that 28 Nas, I run 22-inch barrel with one of our 6+ suppressors. With my hand loads, I'm right at 3,100 feet per second with a 184 grain bullet. And I'm cleaning about every 75 to 80 rounds. If I go past 80, that's when I'll start seeing that pressure start spiking, start getting a little bit more velocity. 6.5 PRC, something smaller like that, you could go past that, real easily. Especially, that's what the suppressor, you pull a suppressor off, man, you could get well above 100 super quick, super easy. Yep. And one of the things to think of is the more you just let something go, you'll start building a carbon ring up, things like that, and it's just a longer process to get that gun clean to where you need it to be. And when we say clean, another thing we harp on at LRU, we're not taking that gun down to bare steel. We're really just kind of knocking out the high spots, making sure everything's clean. We're using KG or Bortec or whatever it may be. And running a good carbon remover through there, a good copper remover through there, a bore paste too for something that's really dirty if need be. And
And we have a cleaning episode on the podcast and on YouTube. So kind of go through our whole process there. But the big thing is preventative maintenance, so you're not getting that carbon ring like you're talking about. So
why is it important not to clean right before a hunt though, Ian?
Well, gosh, if you're stripping that thing down, heck, sometimes after I clean, I'll see guys, especially at school, they'll go to re-zero now, and they'll be, let's say, 1.5 inches to the right. Yeah. And they shoot 2 groups, and they're still about 1 inch to 1.5 inches right. And what do? They dial to the left that 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and in about 2 more groups, now they're 1 inch to 1.5 inches left. because it wandered itself back to its original 0, right? So it's like you want to shoot your gun dirty. Yeah, I mean, seasoned is a polite word. You want it to be dirty, right?
Definitely.
Not so dirty that you're changing your impact.
Yep. You're seeing that velocity spike. You're seeing, when you're going to eject a spent round, that getting some heavy bolt lift, things like that.
Right. So it's not impacting those things, but as dirty as it can be is probably as best as it's going to shoot. Okay.
Velocity too, right?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yep. Huge. Yeah. So you can, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Most folks think once you clean that barrel that you're going to, your velocity is going to speed up, but it's not. It's going to slow down because you have less pressure going down that barrel and less, which is going to just cause you to have your feet per second be less. We've seen 120 from, the first couple rounds out of a barrel after it's been, cleaned.
Yep. So when it's seasoned.
Yeah, it's seasoned.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Well, guys, that's where we're at. That's the big points right there. There's so much more you can do, but if you have a reliable gun and you're pulling it out of the safe, there's these 5 steps you can do, and you're ready to rock again. Okay. I think to wrap it up, I want Pake to tell us a story about when he was zeroing his rifle for a hunt and an opportunity just presented itself.
Oh man. So out, zeroing a 6.5 that I had, just pulled the suppressor off, not for any particular reason. I was putting it on a different gun. So I was just re-zeroing in a rifle, and it was one of those things. I was out looking for a chronograph and had my Kirsten girlfriend with me at the time, and was out looking for getting a chronograph pulled out. And pretty soon, it was during antelope season, and a group of antelope walked by, and I'm
right
like,
where yours,
right where I was zeroing, and Kirsten's like, Pake, and I'm not really paying attention. I was cussing this chronograph at the time because it wasn't working for me, trying to figure out what was wrong. She probably tried to get my attention 2 or 3 times, and I finally like, what? And she's like, she just starts pointing and freaking out. It's like, oh, there's antelope right there.
right in front of the dang target that he set up.
Right in front of the 2. I was, this would have been at 200 yards. So yeah, I was zeroing at 100 yards, and I knew that, it's 200 yards. I held, generally speaking, when you put a suppressor on a gun, it's going to impact low and to the left, generally speaking. So I knew that, hey, at 200 yards, I'm just going to hold a little bit higher. And a little higher to the right, shot an antelope, and it ran about 20 yards, tipped over.
Easiest hunt.
Easiest hunt I've ever had.
Shortest hunting season you ever had. All right. Well, thanks, Pake. Thanks, Ben. Guys, if you want to learn more, keep getting on these podcasts. We're going to be trying to do them more often. We had a slow spot where we had a lot of products coming out and the trade shows. We just got busy. So we're trying to get back here and start hammering out some more podcasts. But you can learn a lot from these, our YouTube videos. And actually, this How to Get Your Rifle Set Up in 15 Minutes should be on a YouTube video as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunwerks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunwerks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.